Welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, J.R. Stewart.
And good evening, everyone. I'm your co-host, Tommy Duncan. Welcome.
Welcome. Let's get some of the administrative stuff out of the way first. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button so you will get, and the bell button that goes with it, so you will be notified whenever we post new shows. The show airs live every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central Time. So for you folks on the East Coast, that's about 9 o'clock, and you folks on the West Coast, it's about 5 o'clock. So, or 7 o'clock.
Well,
I'm sorry,
it's 10 o'clock for the East Coast.
10 o'clock on the East Coast, 7 o'clock on the West Coast. So there we go.
Yes, sir.
I think that's it. And for those who have watched the show before, who are already subscribers, we appreciate your patronage. Please spread the word. We're trying to grow. We like to at least get an additional 10 subscribers out of this show right here alone because it is worth it. So, Tom, let's get started. Who do we have today? Who are we talking about?
So we're going to be talking about Miss Shirley Chisholm. Probably most well known as the first black woman voted into the Congress in the late 20th century, and also the first black person, period, to run on a major party ticket for president in 1972.
That was going to be my trivia question. Who was the first black person to run for president? Some may have thought it was Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton. Did Al ever run for president? I know Jesse did.
Yeah, Jesse did in 84 and 88.
So, but he was not the first.
No, sir.
Although some people think he was, but he was not the first. Yeah, Miss Shirley Chisholm was the first, and she didn't do too bad. I think I remember her getting a few hundred delegates. And she didn't win that many states. Obviously, as a black woman, it was tough. But reading her autobiography, and it's been a while now. But reading her autobiography, she attributed her toughest uphill battle, Tom, was against black people, black men at the
Yes,
time.
it was. She said she did not get a lot of love from a lot of her black male constituents, primarily because she was a woman.
She said the black man needs to come up, but that doesn't mean the black woman needs to go down for him to come
Absolutely.
up. That we can all come
Yeah,
up together.
yeah, I think that's a mantra that a lot of sisters today may have to pick up. She said even back then that the black man definitely needs to step up, but that doesn't mean that the black woman needs to step back.
That is true. That is so true today as it was back in 1972 when she was running. The other issue she had, Tom, she didn't raise very much money, only about $300,000, man.
Yeah, very, very underfunded for a campaign for president of the United States. I mean, that might work at a local level or a state level, but not for president of the United States.
Tom, but how could that be with several million black folks in America? If everybody came out of their pocket and just gave $1, she should have had several million in her coffer to run.
Yeah, well, I think part of it, may have had to do with just the region that she was in, but there's obviously a pretty significant, black population in the Northeast and New York in particular, which is where she represented in Congress. But when you look at the country as a whole, there were a lot of folks. I think, fortunately and unfortunately, she had in 1972, which doesn't seem that long ago to some of us, even though it was. I mean, number one, she was a woman. Number two, she was black. But again, I think the biggest issue was most folks seeing a woman run for president on a major political ticket. I think that was the biggest issue back then, is that she was a woman.
Well, Tom, what didn't quite come out in the book. I think she wrote a second book, but in her first book, what I couldn't quite figure out is she was a successful 7-term congressperson. What motivated her to run for presidency? Um,
You know,
Knowing
that
that she was going to get some opposition. I mean, I guess she anticipated that. Maybe she didn't anticipate how much she was going to get from black men at the time. Um, but surely somebody, her husband, somebody must have thought she could be successful at doing this. Else, why put yourself through it?
well, that brings up a very interesting question, Jimmy. I mean, when you go into her background and her growing up. She had a very, very high self-identity and a lot of confidence in herself. She was raised by West Indian parents, spent some time with her grandmother in Barbados, who gave her a very strong sense of identity. And I think she probably looked around in 1968 and the early 70s and saw these folks in front of her and probably said, you know what, these yahoos aren't any smarter than I am. And I think I can run this country better than any of these yahoos. And she may have been right, but the reality of it is you have to fight for votes, and other people have to believe that as well. But I think her inspiration, one of the things that I read about in her research is that, you know, when she was, I think, in college in, I think at, City College in New York, is that she had pretty close to a genius IQ. So she was an extremely smart cookie, and she also was very good in debate as well. So even though she was an educator by trade, she obviously could think critically. She was obviously very good in terms of articulating her ideas, and probably saw a lot of these guys who weren't very smart at all sitting up in Congress and said, you know what, I'm just as smart as they are. And by sheer will, she decided, you know, I'm going to go for a run for it. What do I have to lose?
Well, definitely she was smarter than George McGovern at the time.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you know, with that being her opposition, who she was running against for the most part, I could definitely see her coming to that conclusion that I'm definitely smarter than that Yahoo.
Yeah.
So,
and she went to Brooklyn College. It was Brooklyn. She got her bachelor's from Brooklyn College.
Where did she get her master's from?
Yeah.
Do you know?
What's that now?
Where did she get her master's from?
She got her master's from Columbia University.
Columbia, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, really nice.
But yeah, she was extremely smart. She was very bright, and she was probably smarter than most of the people that she was around. It was just that they looked at the surface of who she was and judged her.
That would be true. So I can only imagine, man, the early '70s, the not only the racial issues that are going on, but the issue of sex. Like I said, by her being a woman, a black woman, by being black and then being a woman, and then running for presidency, I could just imagine the shock, and some would have thought the audacity of a black woman to even dare put a name on an application to apply, you know, for
Jimmy,
such a job.
Let's be quite honest with ourselves. It's 2020, and there are probably people today who would say, what audacity does this woman, black or white, have in trying to run for president? Not vice president, but president. Even though clearly we've had some within the last few cycles in the foray. But even today, Jimmy, and this is 2020, a lot of people will be looking sideways and looking seriously at a female candidate for president. Even if you look at Hillary Clinton in the last election cycle, at the end of the day, her political life as president came down to the white female vote, and they didn't vote for her.
Well, Tom, she's a crook.
Well, regardless of that,
if you had another,
at the end of the day, Jimmy,
if you had another white woman,
white female,
if you had another female woman, white or black, Hispanic, it wouldn't matter, with her pedigree, but was likable. I mean, women just didn't like Hillary. You know, and they liked her husband, but they didn't like her.
Touche.
So
Two different personalities.
So there are those who say that the country would never elect a black man to be president or a black person to be president. And in our lifetime, we've seen that that myth has been taken down. So I certainly believe that a woman can get elected in America, you know, provided she's likable, provided people believe in her, she has some ideas besides how to steal all the money her and her husband can grab when they leave the White House.
You're right, Jimmy, but I think the point is a woman, unfortunately, even in 2020, with the same political pedigree, with the same intelligence, would have more hurdles to overcome
that would be
than
true.
a man in the same situation. But I would agree with you, and obviously, you know, we're however many months away from it, but it looks like Joe Biden has decided that he will if he stands true to his word, be selecting a woman as his running mate for president this year. So we'll see how that turns out.
And that's going to be his downfall, Tom.
We'll find out.
Okay.
We will find out.
Because if he were to pick someone like a Shirley Chisholm to be his running mate, I would be a little more optimistic about his chances of winning. But unfortunately, he sort of hinted early on that he may select. I can't think of her name. The state congressperson from Georgia, who ran for governor, and her name is probably going to come to me after I end the show. But if he doesn't pick a black person, then black folks are going to be upset. If he doesn't pick a gay woman, the LGBTQ whatever alphabet community is going to be upset. So by announcing early on that he was going to pick a woman, he has already cornered himself to piss off a large number of people, no matter who he picked. Unless he pick a black Latina a lesbian, he may be in some trouble.
Well, I'll put it this way. He has limited his options. We'll see how that works for him. And I guess whomever he chooses, the question will be, as at the end of the day, they say, well, you're not voting for the vice president, you're voting for the president. So the question will be, how much confidence does the electorate have in Joe Biden as president, not in whomever he selects as vice president?
Well, on top of that, Tom, I mean, he's an older gentleman, and sometimes he looks like he's losing it mentally because he can't remember what city he's in or what college campus he's speaking on sometimes. And he says some of the most bizarre things, and so it makes you wonder, just how lucid the man is. With that being said, you're going to now go out and pick someone, because you're going to piss some men off. Well, not because you picked a woman, it's because you pre-qualified yourself or that candidate, your candidate that you're going to select to be a woman. So it's like, what, men are not good enough to be your running mate? So, it would have been nice for him to announce that maybe closer to the convention, when it gets time to pick a running mate, to just do it, but do it quietly. But then when you put it out there this far in advance, that this is what you're going to do, like I said, you're bound to piss some people off in time. They have a very long time for that to slowly build up a little bit of fire into a forest fire by the time the convention comes.
Well, we'll definitely see. But let me ask you this. You did make a very poignant statement in saying if he were to elect someone like a Shirley Chisholm, you might have a little bit more confidence in it. So in your opinion, what would a Shirley Chisholm bring to the table?
Well, Tom, I think from my sense of her, she had a strong sense of fairness. In today's atmosphere of highly partisanship, she seemed to be a little bit above that. She wasn't, even though she was a Democrat, I never really, she never struck me as being a liberal or extreme liberal or partisan ideologue hack. A person who was consumed with a sense of fairness and trying to balance things. I'm trying to think of, man, I think I'm going to become a Joe Biden myself. There's a lady who was a DNC chair for a minute from Louisiana, and I can't think of her name either, although I can see her face. She's another one that is, when I see her doing interviews and she's in the hot seat because she has to speak up for some of the craziness that may exist on the Democratic side, she is extremely balanced and fair in her answers and the way she approached things. She makes it very clear that her goal would be for both sides to come together, work together to find a solution that works for everyone, as opposed to somebody having to win.
You're talking about Donna Brazile?
Donna Brazile. Why can't I think of Donna's name? Yes, Donna Brazile. So she's one a Democrat that I think is fair and balanced, or certainly can be. The public statements that she makes, they never seem to be one-sided. So I think Shirley Chisholm would bring that type of leadership, to the ticket, and she would be someone that you look at her public statements, you look at her public life, and it does not point to a person who is an ideologue either direction. It seems like she came across as someone who would be fair and balanced as best she could in the situation presented. Well, with the thing that she would have to deal with, she would go about it trying to be as fair as possible. So for that reason, I think she would actually add some benefit to a Joe Biden ticket today, as opposed to some of the women that he may go and select who do not share that sense of balance. And I'm sorry, if you are far left liberal, he's a far left liberal, there's no balance on that ticket. There's nothing to say that if you do elect this man, that the other side are going to get a fair shake or consideration from him or his vice president.
Gotcha. Well, one of the things that I do think that she would have been an asset, considering her track record, when she, came to Congress, is she was, very strong on helping those who were in need. In particular, for instance, folks who were kind of on teetering between poverty and trying to get into the middle class. I mean, she focused on, getting more dollars to the poor, getting more dollars focused on education, introducing bills to help strengthen the education system, especially in poor neighborhoods, in addition to getting unemployment benefits for people like domestics and things of that nature, focusing on veterans affairs, expanding the food stamp program and things of that nature. And I think those are things that she had a track record of that would really resonate to the base across color, not in particular for just black, who she happened to be, or just a woman who she also happened to be, but people who are struggling to survive and working people. And I think that is the type of message and the type of work that would be an asset to a Joseph Biden. Not that people see him as a blue blood, they see him kind of as a working class guy. But when you look at a Shirley Chisholm and who she really focused on helping, she helped the masses of people. She could not be confused with anybody who was trying to focus on getting more money to the wealthy and the privileged.
Well, that is true, Tom. And like I said, she was a Democrat. But I think her, like you pointed out, the things that she worked on while she was in Congress, there's nothing there that would certainly disqualify her or that would alienate too many people when you have a track record of trying to help. So she did bring that, and that's what she would bring to a modern day ticket if she were alive today and someone like a Joe Biden were to, select her to run. Me myself, as a far right conservative ideologue, my politics wouldn't necessarily align with her, but they wouldn't necessarily run contrary to some of the things that she worked on and agreed on. Because we can all, I think, agree, whether we're on the right or the left or the middle, that there's certainly nothing wrong with trying to help people who are trying to help themselves.
Right.
So we have to look out for those who are not able to help themselves, but then certainly make a pathway for those who are trying to help themselves to do that and better themselves.
Yeah, and it's not just wealthy people who are trying to help themselves to more money.
Well, wealthy people are always going to help themselves to more money, Tom, because that's the way the system is built. If it wasn't built that way, we wouldn't have any wealthy people.
Well, this is true, but you also have a lot of impoverished people out there who are being blocked from being able to climb up to that next level. A lot of the money that's getting a portion, to folks who need help aren't getting to folks who really need it the most.
Well, Tom, I mean, it's not a political or economic discussion, but that's just the way the system is made because
True.
If it was easy for everyone to become a billionaire, you would have 360 million billionaires in America. Everyone would be one.
Yeah.
So success is not easy. It's achieved for those who are willing to put the work in. And for the most part, I'm not going to say all people. There are a lot of hardworking people who may not have the success they want, but for the most part, you get out of life what you put into it. So
that's true. And so I guess if we look at these last few minutes that we can talk about Miss Chisholm and her legacy, what are your thoughts? Because I think she is, Jimmy, one of those unheralded firsts. There are a lot of people who know who Shirley Chisholm is maybe in our generation, but when we look at the next generation, We look at millennials and the generation after that, probably not as familiar with the Shirley Chisholm. And to be quite frank, Jimmy, there are probably a lot of people in our generation who may not really understand her significance.
That is true, Tom. I'm trying to think of her one of her books, um, Unbeaten, Unbossed.
Yep, yep,
Okay,
that was her campaign slogan.
and I can't.
Unbought, unbought, and unbossed.
Oh, Unbought. That's right. It was Unbought, Unbossed. And then what was the second book? Do you know?
I do not know the second book.
Okay, so once again, Tom, we keep reiterating this how important it is for our generation to help spread the word and encourage parents, people who have children, to educate their children about our history. You may have heard of Shirley Chisholm, most of the time in just brief passing. A lot of young kids today have no clue who she is, have no clue what her contribution to society. And unfortunately, during Black History Month, she's not going to be included in most textbooks uh,
Yeah,
because they're trying to get slavery and Martin Luther King civil rights during that month out of the way. So for that reason, Tom, you're right. She may be unsung and forgotten, and if we don't start taking positive efforts to hold on to our history and then spread that history from one generation to the next, someone like her may be forgotten by history, and that would be sad.
exactly. I mean, again, if she had never even run for president of the United States, she is the first black woman, the first black woman to be elected to Congress. I think Adam Clayton Powell was the first of the modern generation back in 1945 or so, but she was the first black woman to be elected, to Congress in the United States of America in 1968, Jimmy.
Tom, let's be honest now. Clayton was kind of past it a little bit. Um, he may not be as threatening physically, and I mean threatening, I mean color, nose, hair, eye. She was a black person, period. There's
Yes,
no,
no
there's no ifs,
confusion.
ands,
Now,
and
Adam
doubts
Clayton
about it.
Powell surely would have passed. He could have passed. He
You know,
didn't because he pissed off a lot of people. But Clayton Powell could have passed. Shirley Chisholm could not.
could not. She was definitely a black woman, which made it a little more difficult, I would imagine. So I would rank what she did a little bit above what Clayton did. Not to say that he didn't have his difficulties also, but and the fact that he was a man, which was just the path is probably a little easier for men, but versus being a woman and being a fairly obvious black woman that you couldn't disguise that, no makeup, no wig, nothing. She is a black woman.
Yes.
So, so Tom, before we run out of time, I know you had another death that of someone we need to mention tonight and give a little bit of a
Yes.
shout out to
Yes.
the
Yes.
tribute.
Yes. I was watching a show this past week in one of my favorite 60 Minutes, and it was a reminder. Ellis Marsalis, who is a great jazz musician, a great mentor, a great teacher, a great patriarch of the arts of jazz in particular. Also the father of Branford Marsalis, Wynton Marsalis, world-renowned musician. He had a couple of other
Yes.
sons who were also great musicians as well. Just passed to the land of our ancestors. I believe it was on April the 1st of this year. But he was definitely a foundation for so many great musicians and jazz artists in the 20th century.
I guess that makes sense, Tom. I did not realize that the Marsalis family, that their father was a jazz musician also, but I guess that makes sense. And that's probably how they got their interest in music passed
Yes.
down to them. So that I didn't know, but he is definitely worth mentioning and keeping in our prayers. For those out there, please keep the Marsalis family in your thoughts and prayers during this time of great loss for them.
Right, because he was also he was on staff at your alma mater, University of New Orleans, I believe, until 2001 or so. So he influenced a lot of people and was in very high company. And I think his sons obviously are a lot more well renowned and publicized and noticed that he was, but he performed with a lot of great musicians, and he has to be acknowledged as one of the foundation pieces that lifted the careers of a lot of people.
Yes, that is true. And plus, man, it's good to see a being passed down from one generation to the next, and not just go to the grave with the person who possessed it. What I would give to be able to have my offspring to be able to say the same thing. I can pass something down to them. But that apple hit the ground and started rolling, and it rolled and rolled and rolled, and it's so far from the tree you can't even tell what tree it came from now. So that's a sad statement I'm going to have to take to my grave.
I know it, man. And the thing about it is, I mean, having these conversations, I mean, it's real now at this stage in life. But when you start talking about legacy and what's being passed on, that's a serious thing, and we don't have enough of those conversations at our house at the dinner table. You have folks who are, clicking at their phone, but they're not having conversations about their family and their legacy, where they came from and where they're going.
Well, unless you FaceTime it through the phone,
Yes.
I mean, I've had to done. I'm sorry, I get my words mixed up. I've had to do that several times myself to get a conversation with one of mine. So, but that's just the nature of the beast today. And if I had to do it all over again, Tom, I think I'd probably go buy me an Asian kid or two to add to the offspring, just to balance it out a little bit. So
well, you can always adopt, Jimmy. You can always adopt.
Yeah. Well, I think my next go around, I'm gonna give me a couple of sea otters, man. They seem to be pretty smart and attention hogs, and so I don't think I have any trouble having a face to face with the sea otter if they're looking to me to feed them every day.
Gotcha. Well, I guess we're out of time, huh?
Yes, we are at that point. So we had a minute or so left. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone for watching our show. Please subscribe if this is your first time watching. If you're a regular subscriber, please spread the word. We're on every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Central Time. So please join us. Also, starting next week, I'm going to order us a phone number, and we will allow viewers to call into the show if you want to participate in the discussion real time. And with that being said, Tom, I'm going to give you the last word to close it out.
All right. I want to thank everyone again for joining us and or watching our show during and after the show. We ask that everyone be in prayer for those who are being affected by the pandemic. Most importantly, be safe, take care of yourself, understand your history, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay. And we didn't forget, I said I was going to make sure I didn't forget this week about our book list. So,
yes.
So this week, we have two books that we've added to the list. Tom recommended Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson.
Yes, sir.
A very great book. Every black person should have read the Miseducation of the Negro. I'm sorry, if you haven't read it, get it from Amazon, get the Audible version if you want, but you have to read the book. That is a must. If not, we're going to reject your black card. For me, I selected Their Eyes Are Watching God by Nora Zeal Hurston. One of my favorites. And the thing that I really like about it is, she was an anthropologist by trade, by discipline, and the way she captured the environment and the language. She didn't just tell a story. She told a story using the dialect. So the book is a little difficult to read initially, but hang in there with it, stick with it, and before you know it, you'll be speaking that backwood Delta, dialect that was spoken back then. So it gives you a true sense of being there during that time.
And why are we doing the book selections again, Jimmy, just to remind everyone?
Just a reminder, these are the books that black people should read. This is our list of the books that influenced us, and we're going to pass that list on to those who watch the show. And once again, if you don't hold on to your history, to your culture, to your literature, to your music, to everything that's blackness, then you run the risk of having it evaporated, stolen from you. So
Absolutely, and that's exactly what has happened throughout our history.
that is exactly what is happening. So, and I can't blame other people for being attracted to our culture and want to participate in it, want to be involved in it. But if we don't claim it, we don't step up, and before you know it, you won't even know that it was yours. So you'll be looking at other people thinking that this was something that they started. And like I said, we're not anti anyone here. We just have to be extremely pro-black.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. With that being said, we're going to call it a night. So thanks for watching, and we will certainly see everyone later.
Good night, everyone.
All right.